Hello everyone, welcome to another edition of Tech Talks with NASSCOM Insights. I'm Ashish Gupta and I lead startups and deep tech research at NASSCOM Insights. Joining me today are two very special guests from Initarium and Tredence. On behalf of NASSCOM Insights, I'd like to welcome first Mr. Sujeeth Joseph, who is the Chief Product Officer at Initarium. So giving a brief about Sujeeth, Sujeeth is responsible for transitioning technology components incubated in Initarium's R&D lab named the Crucible into commercially viable use cases. With a career spanning over 30 years, Sujeeth Joseph is a semiconductor industry veteran in the SoC system and product architecture space. In the past, Mr. Joseph also led leadership roles in SanDisk and Wipro Technologies. So welcome, Mr. Sujeeth.
Thank you.
We also have with us Mr. Changa Reddy, who is Senior Director, Vertical Delivery Head, Retail at Tredence. Mr. Reddy has 20 years of consulting experience implementing data and analytics solutions for cross-sector clients, focusing on reducing cost and improving operational efficiencies and adoption across different business functions. In addition to this, he has also seen the transition from database solutions and package analytics to advanced self-service analytics over the last 2 decades. Very interesting profile. So, Mr. Changa Reddy, welcome to you also for this edition of Tech Talks.
Thank you, Ashish.
So we are here to discuss and brainstorm around the evolving deep tech ecosystem in India. Deep tech ecosystem has been growing in a big way in the last few years, and we are seeing a lot of things are happening in this ecosystem. And over time, we have also understood its importance also. So deep tech is important not only from the innovation perspective, but the product enhancement that it leads to when it is integrated with some other products. To understand this complex deep tech ecosystem, NASSCOM recently did a study on India's deep tech startup poised for impact. The report highlights about India's deep, innovating and vibrant deep tech ecosystem that currently has over 3,000 deep tech startups, which are growing at a great big CAGR of over 50%. If you talk about the funding is also growing rapidly, and currently in the last 2 years, the funding increased by over 1.5x. And there are also increasing number of deep tech startups focusing only on enterprise and BFSI sector. So a lot of vertical specific solutions have also come up in the recent times. Through this report, we also went a level deep to understand those startups who are actually inventive deep tech products. And that is, again, our focus on today's discussion will be on what kind of deep tech startups, what kind of technologies we are using in building the solutions. As of now, there are 500 plus inventive deep tech startups that are building IP-driven solutions. And it is expected that more such startups will come up in the future. And that is, we need to create the impact for the economy. We need more such inventive IP-driven deep tech startups. These inventive deep tech startups have filed for numerous patents, and that is not only in India and abroad. And we have highlighted through numbers in our report that more than 370 plus patents have been filed by these deep tech startups in India for a set of numbers that we have analyzed. The most surprising part is that more than 90% of these patents are filed in the last 5 years only. So the deep tech, emergence, or we can say the deep tech run has started more than 5 years back. So in past 5 years, we have seen a strong growth of the deep tech ecosystem in India. Now, the importance of this sector can also be understood by the impact of the deep tech that the deep tech startups have been doing. From job creation to promoting second generation entrepreneurs, from helping in achieving India's SDG goals to creating mainstream impact through data sovereignty, resource management. So all these things are the impact that deep tech startups are creating on the ecosystem. And these are transformation impacts, and we need more such impacts from the deep tech startups. So let's understand from the panelists what they think about this deep tech ecosystem, why this deep tech ecosystem is important for them, and how they are and how deep tech is intervening into their business growth, into their business journey. So we'll start with Mr. Sujeeth Joseph. So Sujeeth, we'd like to know your thoughts on why deep tech deep tech ecosystem is important, why deep tech is important for you, and how it is intervening into your business day-to-day operations.
Hey, thanks for the intro, Ashish. Yeah, maybe we'll start with a little bit of a buzzword, digital transformation. It is a term that I believe all of us have been hearing for the last few years. It might sound like a fancy term, especially for core engineering folks. But fortunately for all of us here, it is very real. And organizations globally have been embarking on this fancy term called digital transformation over the past several years. And this transformation absolutely would not have been possible without the extensive application of what we call as deep tech components. And the use cases are truly numerous, literally applicable to any business process that all of us can think about. It could be just picking things from the air. It could be running a production line, or somebody might want to streamline supply chain or logistics, or maybe an IT manager would want to run a large-scale IT infrastructure for a big corporation. Or from a banking scenario, business efficiency improvement, or risk assessment, or fraud detection. You can think of all kinds of use cases, and literally you name it, and it has been either transformed to some extent, or it is ripe for transformation using deep tech. And we've been kind of very lucky to be able to apply AI as the core underpinning, which is what we largely do at Ignitarium, among other things, to be able to participate in some of these digital transformation journeys, both internally as well as externally for some of the global customers that we work with.
So Mr. Changa Reddy, your views on the same, so how deep tech is intervening in your business, and what do you think about the India's deep tech ecosystem and why it's important?
Sure, Ashish. Yeah. So I think Sujeeth pointed about the whole digital transformation, right? So I think the pace at which we are able to transform ourselves across the user personas in the whole journey through deep tech has been very well proven over the last 8 to 10 years in particular, right? So if you really look at the underpinning of all this is the affordability of compute through cloud, right? That's one major factor. And the other thing is how quickly we are able to build applications on top of deep tech today and able to roll out, right? So what generally takes a year or year and a half, today takes about month and a half, we are able to productionize something, right? So the agility that we are able to apply in turning a concept into reality is something that is possible through what is known as deep tech today, right? So in that sense, if you look at a retailer today, whether it is a traditional retailer who has a brick and mortar business, or is somebody who is a modern retailer who is solely operating e-com, the channels are many, right? The channels through which somebody is able to sell today is many. The channels through which you promote products is too many. But how effectively we are able to leverage data to drive insights from all of these, right from acquiring a customer all the way through the entire life of a customer, or look at the efficiency at which the supply chain needs to operate, right from a consumer products company all the way to retailer, and all the way to the product getting shipped to the customer, whether it is from a fulfillment center or a distribution center, all the way to the customer. There is a lot of complexity and a lot of data being captured today, right? So through deep tech, we are able to capture a lot of this information quickly, and we are able to analyze, and we are able to produce insights that different user personas across the life cycle able to derive a lot of insights to make meaningful outcomes, and able to apply some of this to improve either the top line or bottom line, right? So if I look at retail, there are plethora of use cases that we are able to solve, but we were able to solve a lot of these use cases, but it used to take a lot of time. It used to, the time, by the time we actually produce that insight, a lot of times that insight is no longer needed, right? But with deep tech, what we are able to do is capture this data real time, and near real time, we are able to produce an insight that's actually helping us to make a decision that's going to help improve the overall top line and bottom line. So, especially the vertical that I lead at Tredence, there are a ton of use cases that we are able to solve because of some of the application of deep tech in this area. The other interesting thing is a lot of this would generally would have costed a lot of money, right? Because again, it's time and also labor intensive as well to do some of these things earlier. But with some of the frameworks and some of the deep tech companies, niche products that some of the deep tech companies are able to build, we're able to use some of that to reduce the overall time to value significantly, right? So that's another big, boon to turning some of the data to insights as well. Here at Tredence, over the last 10 years, we've been focusing on what we call last mile adoption of insights. Essentially, we can produce all the insights, but at the end, if user persona is not able to use it the way they want to be able to make a business decision, a lot of the insights are really not useful, right? So a lot of the last mile adoption of insights requires a lot of deep tech integrations and of course the change management. So we're able to do this really well with some of the modern tech stack that's available at our disposal.
Oh, that's a great thought. So, Mr. Sujeeth, you talked about digital transformation, and Mr. Changa Reddy, you rightly said that digital transformation also has to be more affordable, and the it should be agile enough so that people can relate to it, people can build easily build solution over it, and it should be the turnaround time should be as less as possible so that the solution is into the market as soon as possible. That's an interesting thought. So since we touched upon the technology, so my next question will be on the technology only. So there are different technologies that comes under deep tech. And if we talk about some numbers around the technology, so we all know that artificial intelligence lead, and currently more than 50% of the startups are working on AI technology only. If you talk about the share of IoT and big data, that is nearly 15 to 20%. And if we talk about blockchain and AR/VR, that share is less than 10%. But if we look at the overall spread of the technology covered under deep tech, that is quite wide. So these are the 4-5 technologies we talked upon, but there are technologies like 3D printing, robotics, drones, cybersecurity, Web3, quantum, space tech, space, satellite tech, and and many more. So we have seen that over time, the spread of technologies have been increasing. But over the years, again, we are continuously seeing that AI continues to dominate. And in our report, we try to unbundle the AI stack layer. And since we have expert on the panel, so they know about how AI stack layer is different, how AI stack have different layers into it. So we have application layer, interface layer, platform layer, and more. And based on our analysis in our report, what we understood that more than 50% of the solutions are built around interface layer. And the key technologies which people talk about in the market, like computer vision, NLP, these all come under this interface layer only. And we talk about the key solutions that are rapidly gaining the market share, and startups keep on building our image and video processing. So they have the maximum share in the market. So industry is continuously building, or because the startups are continuously building solution on these stack layers based on the kind of demand they are getting it to increase their market presence. So we need to understand from you, Mr. Reddy, which deep tech technologies are utilizing are most in your business and how you're utilizing it. And through that technology, how you're creating the impact for your client. So we'll start with Mr. Reddy.
Sure. Yeah. So, if you really look at, I think cloud has been a big leveler, right? So, a lot of technology that we use today is, deeply embedded within cloud, right? So when I talk about some of the tech stack, whether it is across the 3 popular cloud platforms, we use a lot of AI ML services that are kind of native to these cloud platforms today, right? And we also use a lot of niche products that are available as well. We also have a strong data science and AI center of excellence within Tredence, where we actually build some of the modern algorithms in both the video and text space as well, right? So now if you really look at, I think you quoted some examples in terms of how the interface layer is being built and scaled, etc., for some of the enterprises. But what we are actually seeing is a lot of the AI ML use cases, for them to really see the light of the day, it requires deep integrations, right? So when I say what deep integrations, what I really mean is it has to become part of the routine of a end user, right? So it does, end user doesn't really need to know that there is an algorithm that is running behind the scenes and someone is actually managing this, someone is spending time to productionizing it and all of that. How do we make analytics as part of end users routine, right? So the way we would take maps for granted is how we really look at analytics adoption for a end user, right? So it's not just the the one insight that we built on one day, but how do we really scale this to the point where it becomes part of an end user's routine is has been our big focus area. So a lot of what we do is heavily integrated with systems that an end user uses every day. So maybe just to give you an example, for instance, a promotion planner, what is going to be more useful is how analytics get embedded within the systems that the planner uses, right? So when somebody is setting up a promotion, if we are able to provide an insight, what cannibalization the promotion is going to have on other products, or how competitor pricing is going to affect promotions, and if we are able to do some sort of simulation in terms of what the outcome is or what the output is based on dollars that are being allocated to a promotion, so that's going to provide a lot of value, right? So if you look at a lot of applications that we are building within Tredence for our clients, they're heavily integrated with systems that end users use, right? So, and a lot of times you don't even realize that there is an algorithm that is actually running behind the scenes. So, it's one thing to really build these, the whole deep tech through AI ML. Even you talked about less adoption in IIoT, but what we are seeing is, especially in industrial use cases, there is ton of IoT work that's it is AI at the or otherwise aggregating data at different time intervals and then making decisions, etc. There's still a lot of analytics happening with IoT data as well, right? But what our learning has been over the last 10 years is essentially integrating all of this data capturing, the ML outputs, and the AI use cases with applications that the end users are using routinely is what brings a lot of value from the investments that we are making on enabling these use cases.
That's an interesting point. I think one of the key points you highlighted is the integration with the end user system. That's quite insightful. Mr. Sujeeth, your response on how you're utilizing the technology and the impact you're creating for the end client.
Yeah, hey Ashish, I think you talked about many of those cool deep tech, for example, space tech or quantum. Many of these are not really they're way too niche at this point. If there were three things that are as part of deep tech that are really enabling this digital transformation, it would be IoT, cloud, and AI. Now, incidentally, for most of us who've been around for a while, none of these are new. All of three of these have been around for decades. What is kind of new is the confluence of all of these three to be able to solve practical problems. Now, IoT and cloud specifically are very, very well understood since they are largely deterministic. AI, unfortunately, is less so. Hence, there has been a kind of an understandable reluctance to go all in on AI in practical deployments in many, many use cases. However, if you were to look at the landscape, we probably have to thank a somewhat traditional industry or a safe industry like automotive for making AI a bit more visible or kind of cool to the wider world with ADAS and self-driving and autopilot and things like that. So at Ignitorium, we have kind of ridden on this newfound awareness or popularity. And when I say newfound, it's probably about 5 years old. And we have deployed our AI solutions in various industries. I mean, ranging from automotive to industrial to infrastructure to medical. We haven't done retail like what Changa described earlier, but these 4 industries we are very, very heavily involved in deploying AI. I'll give you a couple of practical examples. I mean, we have deployed our AI platform, which we call a Staikai, to enable automated inspection of rail tracks in North America. What used to be an extremely manual process where gangs of people would walk along a rail track is heavily automated by the use of sensor-based data, specifically 2D, 3D cameras, which acquires the data of the track, and our algorithms are the ones that are doing anomaly detection. It could be detection of defects on the sleepers, the joints, or the plates, or the components that constitutes a rail track. Another example would be in Europe, our software. In fact, it's the same software platform. We have deployed that to detect defects on wind turbine blades. And there are tens and thousands of these blades or turbines in Europe and in the rest of the world. So we detect very critical events like lightning strikes, what is called as leading edge erosion, cracks, peels, and tens of other categories of defects, which could either result in catastrophic failure of these turbines or significantly reduced or impaired performance. So suffice to say that AI is real, AI is here, AI is creating an impact today, and we at Ignitorium, we've been extremely fortunate to be able to be part of this journey.
I'm really mesmerized after hearing these use cases. So I never thought that on wind turbines also we can put our DEEPTECH solutions. So I think that is what the beauty of this sector is. It can be applied to any vertical, any area, and we can just increase the operational efficiency of this of the product. So now moving to what are the interesting areas. So we are moving away from the tech, and now we want to discuss the more from the ecosystem stakeholder perspective. And so one of the key asks, and most of the stakeholder brainstorm around this question, how we can address the challenges of the DEEPTECH sector. Now, DEEPTECH sector continues to face a set of challenges over the years. Though we know the challenges, but still to understand it from the entrepreneur's perspective, we did a survey in our report. From survey, we found out that talent is considered to be the biggest challenge for a DEEPTECH startup. And this is being an R&D driven, heavily R&D driven sector, right? Getting the right talents is very important. The next challenge, we found out that the founders find it quite difficult to get the right market access. So even after so much work, their product gets ready, and then when they have to go to the market and get the right customer, it's a big challenge for them. And all these things are very much interrelated as it affects to the scaling plan of the DEEPTECH startup and the growth journey of that particular startup. From the survey, we also found that DEEPTECH founders have different asks from different stakeholders to address these kind of challenges. So some founders say that from investor, they want a patient capital. So again, since ROI in the DEEPTECH sector takes time, so it's not that if you invest money, you will get benefit, you starting getting the return in 2-3 months. It takes time. So they want investors to invest and give them time for getting the return. Also, they want continuous funding. So again, one of the issues that founders face is that the funding is not continuous. You get a particular set of funding, then there is a break. Again, being R&D heavy sector, you need money at constant interval of time. So continuous funding is also very much required. And deep tech founders also have some ask from the corporates, so they want POC implementation somehow from the corporates. So corporates should give them a chance to prove the concept node, to prove their product and show them the ability which their product can offer it to the customer. They have some ask from the academia also. So again, to build the product, academia is the place where they have the right knowledge, they have the right brain. So they need research guidance, they need access to labs, they need product incubation, and that only academia can provide. So these are certain asks the deep tech founders have from these stakeholders, and that is what we have covered in the report also. So we want to hear from you to understand the ground realities, what kind of challenges you face in the initial phase of your journey and in the growth stage of your journey, and how you address those challenges. So Mr. Joseph, I start with you. You have grown in Ethereum right from day one to where Ethereum is now. So starting these challenges, then the growth stage challenges, all kind of challenges, you can just give us a brief and how you manage those challenges.
Yeah, so you touched about a few things: talent, funding, access, etc. I mean, let's talk about the funding part of it. Fortunately, we've been bootstrapped and we've been revenue generating from very, very early days of our life. In fact, from year 2 onwards. So that really has not been a challenge for us at all. The talent part is a very interesting question. In fact, when somebody uses the word artificial intelligence, there is just a bit of a feeling of mystery about it, as if an extremely complicated area, which is totally black art. Fortunately, that is not the case. If you look at India, there is plenty of talent available in India. Partly because it is considered to be hot, growing, and extremely remunerative. So if you look at comp science folks, if you look at even a class at random, you would find that almost 90% of the students would be doing their final year projects on something to do with analytics. Even a slightly adjacent stream like electronics and communication, even in their case, you would find 50% of the students would be doing something to do with AI and analytics. So the visibility is so high that there are loads of people who are extremely keen on taking this up as a career. On top of that, there are excellent courses out there, some free, some paid, that many of them can take to get to some level of industry readiness. Definitely not industry readiness, but some level of it. Right? The adder on top of this is the fact that 80% of AI, at least in our experience, you really do not need first principle deep math knowledge. It is about data handling, data wrangling, model identification, model tuning, hyperparameter tuning, application development, and then deployment of a pipeline. The remaining 20% is where the struggle is. Let's say you need a person who has to develop, say, a extremely new or a custom model, which kind of goes away from the tenets of an open source model that is out there. Then, of course, you need people with deep math background. Even in those cases, our experience has been you don't need a team full of PhDs, even to address the 20% of the work. Fortunately, we've had this right mix of people right from day one of our existence, and we've been quite comfortable in not just developing extremely interesting AI algorithms and models, but also to scale that. In fact, our AI team is about 150 people, even as we speak. And then, because we are reasonably established now and a little bit of a brand, it's not that hard to attract talent, is what I feel. And then, as these engineers who come into the system turn up, we have some very, very good internal training programs. I think we have a 3-month training program for AI where people are taken through all the paces that are relevant to what we specifically do, which is largely computer vision and audio and other forms of data analytics. So might sound counterintuitive, but talent has never been a problem for us when it comes to AI.
This is raised very interesting point that training, right training, I think at the right time helped to manage the talent and to manage this choice, the scarcity of the talent. Just to add one more point, I think that you might have missed and want to cover, because a lot of entrepreneurs and founders will listen to this webinar. So you are a bootstrapped. So how you managed to successfully scale from being a bootstrap startup? Because we know people know that being an R&D driven sector, a lot of money is required initially to build the products. How you manage that type of struggle in the initial days?
Find a
were you
customer.
product ready initially only, or before coming to the market, or you have some plan of action beforehand?
So nobody is really product ready when they come to the market. I mean, you will have your core of your tech, but then you've got to go out there and find the appropriate customers, and you really have to compete. There is no other way out there. I believe you also mentioned the expectation of perhaps some kind of a governmental support or access to market. Of course, these would have been wonderful to have, but then if you build the garage expecting that to be your predominant means of success, most likely it's not going to happen. So our experience has been to build something good, iterate, and then find a customer and prove to them and to ourselves that it is absolutely worth their effort to sign up onto some platform like this. So yeah, this is not to say that it's not been a struggle. There has been struggles, but then once you get over the tipping point, life becomes a lot easier.
That makes sense. Absolutely. Mr. Reddy, your views on what are the challenges you face and how you managed to come out of it and scale your business?
Yeah, so first of all, congratulations, Sujeeth. I think for being a bootstrapped company in a world like this, where there is obviously a lot of fund for money. Yeah, so we've been, I think, in the parallel verse, parallel verse where Sujeeth and team were building Ignitarium, at Tredence, our founders were actually building a completely different set of organization for different use cases and for different market. At around the same time, Ignitarium has been about 10 years old, and we have been 10 years old as well. And we were bootstrapped until 2020, right? So there's a lot of similarity in that sense. And again, we are into more services and solutions in data science space, whereas Ignitarium has been more into products. But if you look at, I think, there's a lot of things that we overlap. I think what Sujeeth said, makes total sense even in our context. It's not been, I think, first 5-6 years, even for us, I think the talent was a challenge, but I think we are relatively known now as a, employer of choice for more complex problems. So especially in colleges, we are kind of sought after for analytics work. And also even for laterals hiring, it's very little more well known than what or how we were 5-6 years ago, right? Or 4-5 years ago. So, I think in terms of talent, there is talent available, but for us, the big problem is, it requires a lot of first principles from the vertical standpoint, right? From the industry standpoint. How do you really, identify what are the data sets needed for actually implementing the models, and how do you really, whether it is internal data that is sufficient, or do you have to go acquire some external data sets, and how do you improve the overall, the effectiveness of models that we are building for our clients, right? So that requires more than the tech, more than first principles. It requires a little bit of, knowing the industry to some extent, right? Industry plus the user personas plus the data sets and the larger value system within our clients as well, right? So that's something which we focus on for, making sure people who join with us go through that additional learning so that we have the broader context of the industry that we are serving, right? That's one. The second is, I think you talked about, challenges, right? So the challenges for, I think, deep tech today in my mind is, one is adoption. The other is, the underlying data a lot of times is of poor quality, right? So because we're not building analytics with just point in time data, right? So you're building a lot of your, whether it is AI ML use cases in any space that you look at. So there is a lot of history data that's being used to be able to build something that makes sense for our clients, right? So when you do that, if you don't have good quality data sitting in your system, what you produce may not really be a lot of, usefulness of what we produce will be very, very low, right? So the challenge is, I think Sujeeth talked about data wrangling, data exploration, hyperparameter tuning. All of that is really, really important. But I think one of the core important aspects is figuring out, whether we have quality data or not. And if we don't have quality data, how do we ensure, we improve the overall quality of data before that gets fed into a model, right? And I think even companies that are focused on niche products, which actually solve for very pointed problem. If we are able to demonstrate to a client that, I can solve for quality of the data problem very quickly, and then by doing that, the product that I'm going to deploy is going to produce a lot more value to you. That's, I think, is going to make a big, in terms of value proposition, that's going to, improve the overall value proposition significantly. Whereas, I think all the underlying tech is great, underlying sophistication in tech is great, but if we can't really address some of the underlying problems in data, and then unless we are able to show the outcomes that are closer to reality, adoption is going to be very, very low, right? Because most of the problems that we are solving through deep tech today were also solved using traditional tech, right? So, and users are reluctant to move away from some of that traditional tech. So unless we are able to make value proposition much more greater, the adoption is going to be another challenge. So I think it's the adoption, underlying quality, and applying some of the business context to, while solving some of the problems is something that I would say is key.
Oh, that's interesting, Mr. Reddy. So you mentioned correctly that adoption, I will say underlying customer experience. If experience is good, then adoption definitely will increase, and that is how you can scale your business rapidly in this deep tech ecosystem. And that's an interesting point. I think my next question is very much related to what we have discussed now. So it's more around the best practices. So another one of the best ways to address challenges is by implementing the best practices and adopting growth strategies. So nowadays, as you already talked about some of the growth strategies in some way or the other, but there are multiple strategies which we have found out that nowadays deep tech are implementing into their businesses. So just to give an example that nowadays some of the deep tech startups are focusing on building product that is niche to the market. I think Mr. Reddy, you just covered it. So building solution, just to give an example, building solution for a small sellers or SMB market. So it's a niche market, but yes, if you build a solution for them, and if it has a potential market to grow, then definitely the business is going to scale. Another strategy which we found that deep tech startups can use while they are building their product and trying to tap the market is to test the effectiveness of their product initially, and that they can do it through test beds. So there are various platforms in the market run by corporates and incubators, accelerators, where these startups get chance to showcase their product and test its capability, and it also helps them in getting the required limelight. So I think these test beds are also important. And now to tap the market, the focus should be on collaboration. And collaboration is one of the powerful ways through which you can scale your business. And there are multiple ways to it. So number one is government collaboration. So we have an example. So we at NASSCOM, we have a deep tech club that, incubate various deep tech startups and guide them to the scale journey. So one of the deep tech startups collaborated with the Telangana government on multiple projects. So that is one way you can scale your business. So another is corporate collaboration, where you partnership with any corporate through M&A or stake sale, and can leverage their ecosystem, their knowledge to scale your business. Similarly, a lot of startups are going for global partnerships. So they are collaborating with the global companies through multiple channels, and they are leveraging for their global expansion. One of the interesting growth strategies we have seen, I think if you can talk about that also, that there's increased focus investor group that we have seen in the deep tech ecosystem. So by focus investor means that one investor keep on investing in multiple rounds of funding for the same startup. So the startup don't have to run around to find the investors. So that one investor knows the capability of that particular startup and keep on reinvesting into multiple rounds for that startup. So again, these are some of the strategies which are working for some of the startups. So we'd like to hear from you what strategies worked for them for you to scale your business. Any best practices which worked for you and you want to guide our entrepreneurs and founders in the business they can adopt so that they can also scale their business. Mr. Sujeeth, you can start.
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Ashish. So there's a little bit of a repeat from your earlier question, but and again, this is not a prescriptive method, but something that kind of worked for us. So what we did was and this probably applies to many others as well. Go develop the guts of your tech, get it to some basic level. Do POCs, but then, and we've done this as well. We've done loads of POCs, but then if possible, don't get led on the so-called rabbit hole of endless rounds of especially free POCs. And this is something that happens very often in the India ecosystem. Not that it doesn't happen elsewhere, but it is very common in India.
And again, you just want to interrupt. How to pitch for the POC? That is always question I get it from the founders. How to pitch to get that POC from the corporate?
Right. So there are no magic bullets for this. Many forums will have to be used. For example, you talked about the innovation hubs that are there as part of individual state bodies or the innovation arms of various MNCs, and including many of the big conglomerates of India. So there are many startup programs out there, not necessarily to get funding, but just to get an audience. And behind it, there would be quite a few interested parties who might be keen on adopting the technology if it is interesting. So like I said, look out for these POCs and then do those POCs, but then don't get led down too many rounds of free POCs. And as quickly as possible, try to find a lead customer, specifically if you are into AI. And as Changa said earlier, the importance of data is not to be underestimated. So find the particular lead customer who has got the appropriate data with which you can solve something of relevance to him. And then along the way, identify a key need. It need not be like 20 different problems, maybe one problem, two problems. That is a burning problem for this particular lead customer. Define that as a feature, release it, iterate, solve that particular problem, and really well for that particular customer. And then once you get a little bit of success, double down, narrow down, go deep, whatever term you would like to use, and then try to be really good at what you do or what is your core. In fact, I'll probably give you an example from Ignitarium's world. We do audio and video AI on what we call as power-constrained devices, or what the industry calls as the tiny ML class of problems. This is the complete opposite of running workloads on big giant machines on the cloud. These are tiny machines, but you still need to run very complex audio-video workloads on them. So double down on problems like these, if that is your chosen area. So we become really good at it. In fact, even though if I say this myself, we're extremely good at this tiny ML class of problems because we have an extremely good understanding of the underlying hardware, in addition to the classical deep learning models and the AI ML thing that everybody talks about. So in summary, on this point, once you double down, go deep in your chosen area and be really good at it. Along the way, choose your partnerships judiciously. Again, using our example, we have very strong partnerships with the leaders in some of these AI accelerator devices like NVIDIA, ARM, Renesas, TI, Lattice, and so on, and try to get their attention. Be somebody whose tech is good enough that they would give you time of day simply because they think it might be worth their time. So you put all these things together, and my observation has been there are enough and more problems, as we started off this discussion with. As part of this digital transformation journey that a lot of people are doing, there are enough and more problems out there that needs solving. So if you've got decent tech and reasonably good business positioning, I strongly believe that the world will kind of conspire to let you find your space and be successful in it.
That's a great point. Reddy, best practices which you think can help our ecosystem to grow?
Yeah. So I think, Ashish, I think we spoke a little bit about all of this already to some extent, but we'll try to keep it short. So I think, we are in services and solutions business, right? So we focus on, applying data science to solve for some of the, industry problems. And in that, spotting opportunities, there are a lot of white spaces where, there are some of the products don't really solve for some of the analytics use cases. So spotting those opportunities is key. The second is, making sure that we have a value prop for our clients, we have a value prop for our partners, and we have value prop for our employees as well, right? So why should a partner work with us? Because there's something in it for them. So that's been our big focus area over the last 4 or 5 years. So we've done a lot of tech partnerships. Whether it is in the end-to-end life cycle, right from, taking data and moving the data from one place to another, all the way up to, some of the auto ML product space. We've got partnerships across the entire life cycle, right? So we've been able to leverage those partners, and we've been able to make those partners successful as well. So, it's essentially having value prop for every stakeholders that beyond the business stakeholders, of course, is key. And in terms of how to make ourselves visible, you can see in my background we are actually going to be at NRF. So making sure that we show up for some of these events so that our partners see us, our prospects see us, and that's an important part of being there in this. So apply all of these strategies. Find right partners, find right people, and spot right opportunities, and show up for every opportunity that comes at you. And I think you'll find yourself successful over time.
You rightly said. I think these tick marks will definitely help entrepreneurs to tech startups, because sometimes if you follow the best practices, you face no or almost very less number of challenges. So I think it's always good to follow some best practices standards so that you don't have to face multiple issues going forward. And DeepTech sector is so complex, and so I think we have to somehow make founders' life easy so that they can scale easily, and that is what we want for the ecosystem to grow, to scale the DeepTech ecosystem. I think that's it from our side. Thank you, Mr. Joseph and Mr. Reddy, for joining us today. That's it from this edition of Tech Talks. Stay tuned for more insightful discussions happening in the Indian tech industry with NASSCOM Insights YouTube channel. Please like, share, and subscribe. Till then, it's goodbye from everyone here at NASSCOM Insights. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashish.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you, Mr. Joseph.
Thank you. Take care.